Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Thank you for coming today. We apologize for the delay in starting this press conference. My name is Bill Brown. I am the Sheriff Coroner of Santa Barbara County. I am joined here today by a number of people from the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office, executive and command staff, as well as a number of our members of our allied agencies and community leaders. I'm joined by Acting Under Sheriff Don Patterson, Acting Chief Deputy Sam Gross, who's in charge of our law enforcement operations, Commander Darren Fotheringham, Acting Commander Steve Robel, who is the commander of our Criminal Investigations Division, Lieutenant Kelly Moore, who is overseeing this criminal investigation, and Lieutenant Steve Johnson, who is assisting him in that regard. I'm also going to be joined by Dr. Stephen Kaminsky, who is the Director of Trauma Services for Cottage Hospital, and he will be speaking following my remarks. I also want to acknowledge and thank the community leaders who are present here today to show their support. We have our 2nd District County Supervisor, Janet Wolf, our 3rd District County Supervisor, Doreen Farr, Chancellor Henry Yang from the UC campus in Santa Barbara, Dr. Lori Gaskin, who is the president of Santa Barbara City College, Carlos Canino, who is the special agent in charge of the Los Angeles office of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Dr. Leslie Lunt, who is with the Santa Barbara County Alcohol, Drug, and Mental Health Services, Mark Diarelli, who is the captain and commander of the Santa Barbara office of the California Highway Patrol, Jeff Scoba, who is the assistant chief for Coastal Division of the California Highway Patrol, and Lieutenant Dave Millard of the UC Santa Barbara Police Department. This is our 2nd press conference to present information pertaining to the tragic mass murder incident that occurred last night in Isla Vista. This was a chaotic, rapidly unfolding, and convoluted incident that involved multiple crime scenes. Investigators from the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office and from allied agencies have been processing evidence and investigating this occurrence throughout the evening and up until the present time. Additional information has now been received that will clarify and in some cases correct some information that was preliminarily conveyed at our first press conference. I'd like to start by confirming the identity of the suspect in this case. His name was Elliot Oliver Robertson Rodger, R-O-D-G-E-R. His date of birth was July 24th, 1991. A 22-year-old Eurasian male, a student of Santa Barbara City College who was living in Isla Vista. Our agency has had 3 previous documented contacts with suspect Rodger. The first of those occurred in July the 21st of 2013, when the suspect was contacted at the hospital where he was being treated for injuries and claimed to be the victim of an assault. A UC Police Department officer assigned to the Isla Vista Foot Patrol documented that incident, but received information that the informant, Mr. Rodger, may have actually been the aggressor in that incident. That case was suspended pending any additional leads. The second incident occurred on January the 15th of 2014, when suspect Rodger contacted our agency and accused one of his roommates of stealing 3 candles that were valued at $22. Rodger made a citizen arrest of the roommate on a charge of 488 of the Penal Code, which is petty theft. The roommate was booked into the jail, subsequently cited and released, and later the case was subsequently referred to the district attorney, who filed a petty theft charge in that case. The third incident occurred April the 30th of 2014, when sheriff's deputies contacted the suspect at his residence following a request to check on his welfare. That request had originated from a family member. The deputies contacted the suspect, at the time found him to be polite and courteous. He downplayed the concerns for his welfare, and the deputies cleared the call. I want to now go into a chronology of the events that occurred last night. We believe we have a fairly good, albeit perhaps somewhat still rough, chronology of the suspect's actions last night. We have identified 10 separate locations where criminal activity took place. In several of those locations, there are actually more than one specific crime scene. But I'm going to go through these locations, refer to them as 1 through 10. You have received a sheet that has a map of Isla Vista with the numerals on that sheet to give you an idea of where the incident, or how the incident unfolded, and where what I'm about to tell you occurred. Location number 1, it appears as though suspect Rodger murdered 3 victims within his residence in the 6500 block of Seville Road prior to the shooting rampage that took place last night. The 3 male victims appear to have been repeatedly stabbed. We are still processing that crime scene, and we are still in the process of positively identifying the victims and notifying their next of kin, so I will not have their identities for you at this time. The second location was the beginning of last night's rampage, and that was at the Alpha Phi sorority in the 800 block of Embarcadero del Norte. Several members of this sorority reported hearing loud and aggressive knocking at the front door, which lasted for 1 to 2 minutes. Fortunately, no one opened the door, and shortly afterwards, witnesses reported seeing 3 young women who were standing outside in the vicinity shot by the suspect from across the street. The victims' names, 2 of those victims were fatally wounded, and one, thankfully, is still alive. The 2 victims who were killed were Catherine Breanne Cooper, a 22-year-old, and Veronica Elizabeth Weiss, a 19-year-old. Both of these young ladies were UCSB students. Those were the 2 who were killed, and the 3rd victim, who is still alive, suffered multiple gunshot wounds. After shooting those victims, the suspect then traveled to location number 3, a nearby delicatessen that's located on Pardal Road. He exited his vehicle, he entered the delicatessen, and he shot and killed 20-year-old Christopher Ross Michael Martinez. That's a double-barreled hyphenated name, Michael Martinez. Mr. Michael Martinez was also a UCSB student. Isla Vista Foot Patrol deputies heard the shooting and responded to investigate the incident. As they arrived at the scene, they witnessed the suspect, who at that time was unknown, fleeing eastbound in his suspect vehicle, a black BMW. The suspect continued toward location number 4 at the top of the loop, where he fired multiple rounds at 2 people who were on the sidewalk. Now, the suspect drove his vehicle on the wrong side of the road, and it was parallel to the sidewalk when he shot from the driver's window. The suspect continued forward and he turned southbound onto El Embarcadero, then turned eastbound onto Del Playa to location number 5, where he brandished a handgun at a female victim. The suspect fired additional rounds, turned his vehicle around, and started to travel westbound on Del Playa. A lone sheriff's deputy responding to the area on foot was then taken under fire by the suspect. The sheriff's deputy returned fire, and the suspect drove off westbound on Del Playa. He traveled to location number 6 in the 6600 block of Del Playa, where he struck and injured a bicyclist with his vehicle. The suspect then continued west to Camino del Sur, and he turned northbound onto that road. He proceeded to the intersection with Sábado Tardy, which is location number 7, Camino del Sur and Sábado Tardy road, where he fired multiple shots at pedestrians in the area. 3 of those pedestrians were struck by the suspect's gunfire. The suspect then traveled eastbound on Sábado Tardy, where he shot another victim at location number 8, the intersection of Camino Pescadero and Sábado Tardy. The suspect continued driving eastbound to location number 9, where he came into contact with 4 sheriff's deputies who were running across Acorn Park in response to the gunfire. As the suspect accelerated past the deputies, he fired at them. 3 of the 4 sheriff's deputies were able to return fire at the suspect, striking the suspect's vehicle, and we believe shooting the suspect in his left hip area. The suspect drove off and again turned south on El Embarcadero, proceeded to Del Playa when he turned westbound again on Del Playa, a street he had been on previously. Witnesses reported the suspect accelerating his vehicle to a high rate of speed and striking yet another bicyclist. This victim was thrown onto the hood of the suspect's vehicle and caved in the windshield of that vehicle. The suspect's vehicle then collided with several parked cars and came to a stop. Responding deputies immediately removed the suspect from the car and handcuffed him. He was obviously dead with an apparent gunshot wound to the head. So in summary, there were a total of 10 different locations with 12 actual crime scenes between those locations. Between those locations, there were a total of 7 fatalities, 6 innocent victims, and 1 suspect. An additional 13 people were injured during this melee. 4 of them were apparently injured by the suspect's vehicle when he struck them. 8 of those individuals sustained gunshot wounds, and 1 sustained a minor injury of unknown origin. 3 9mm semi-automatic handguns were recovered from the suspect's vehicle. 2 of these were Sig Sauer P226 model handguns, and the remaining one was a Glock 34 long slide. And we have images of those types of firearms there, as well as a photo of one of the suspect weapons for you on the screen. With the assistance of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, we have determined that all of these weapons were legally purchased from federally licensed firearms dealers, and that they were all registered to the suspect. 1 weapon was purchased in Goleta, one in Oxnard, and one in Burbank. In addition to the weapons, the suspect had 34 loaded 10-round magazines for the Sig Sauer pistols and 7 10-round magazines for the Glock pistol. This investigation is continuing, and we expect more information will be released within the next day or two. At this time, I would like to turn the podium over to Dr. Kaminsky for some comment regarding the injured victims.
Thank you, Sheriff Brown. I'll be very brief. My last name is Kaminsky, K-A-M-I-N-S-K-I. I am the Trauma Director for Cottage Health System in Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N. So I'm the Trauma Director for Cottage Health System and Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. On behalf of Cottage Health System, I extend my condolences to the families and friends of those that were affected by this tragedy. Our thoughts are with you. We are deeply saddened by the events that occurred in our community. We are doing everything we can to provide the best care to the victims who arrived at our hospitals. And our social workers and spiritual care team are providing support for the patients and their families. I can provide you with the following information on this incident. 4 patients were treated and released at Goleta Valley Cottage Hospital last night and early into the morning today. 7 injured victims were transported to our trauma center at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, where they remain in our care. Of those 7, 2 patients are in good condition, 3 patients are in fair condition, and 2 patients are in serious condition. Thank you for your cooperation in allowing the privacy and space needed for these patients and families to heal. Out of respect for their confidentiality and compliance with confidentiality law, I will not be able to provide any further information on individual victims or their injuries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaminsky. And again, I want to thank members of the press for being here. In summary, I would just like to express on behalf of all of the men and women of the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office and our allied agencies and our community leaders who are here today, our deepest condolences to the victims who were killed in this tragic incident, and our best wishes for a speedy and complete recovery from all of the injured victims as well. And I also want to re-emphasize something that I said yesterday, and that is to commend the actions that have been taken in response to this case by the men and women in law enforcement, particularly in my department. I particularly am exceedingly proud of the response that was delivered in the field, the resolute and heroic manner in which my deputies engaged this homicidal suspect in 2 separate gun battles, and I have no doubt that had they not done that and had they not engaged in that kind of activity, that there would have been further loss of life and further injury, especially when we've determined that the suspect had over 400 remaining rounds of ammunition in his possession. So my kudos to all of the people that are involved, in particular those who were actually out there dealing with the incident as it unfolded. We can take a few questions at this point. I will lead with the caveat that some of the information I may not be able to provide to you at this point in time. We will continue to keep you updated as well. Tracy? The question was, when did we become aware of videos that were on the web and the manifesto, the written document that apparently was written by the suspect? We became aware of that fairly quickly in the investigation last night, and in reading this 141-page, rambling, autobiographical, almost a combination of an autobiography and a diary. It's very apparent of the severe extent of how disturbed Mr. Rodger was, and the fact that he had been and was continuing to be seen by a variety of different healthcare professionals, but it's very, very apparent that he was severely mentally disturbed when you review that document. And the videotape is a chilling. There were several videotapes that he had posted, but the one that was posted just prior to the attack is a particularly chilling one, in which he basically looks at the camera and talks about what he is about to do. What I can tell you is that when the deputies contacted him, this was in response to a check on the welfare call, to check on his welfare, to see how he was doing out of concern for him. The deputies contacted him directly at his residence, and they determined that he did not meet the criteria for an involuntary mental health hold. He was, as I said, courteous and polite. He appeared timid and shy. He did not meet the criteria for 5150 of the Welfare Institutions Code, which is what would authorize him being held temporarily for an examination. He expressed to the deputies that he was having difficulties with his social life and that he probably would not be returning to school in the next year. The deputies discussed options with him in terms of support, offered resources to him, and ultimately cleared that call without further action.
Sheriff, having reviewed the case that you're talking about now and building what happened here, is there anything in hindsight you think your agency didn't do that should have been done, or is there anything you regret?
Well, I'm not going to go back and play Monday morning quarterback at this point. We're still investigating this incident and exactly what happened in the interaction that they had. But you've got to understand that this is a fairly routine type of call that is quite commonplace, and the deputies, who are well trained and are adept at handling these types of calls, did contact this gentleman in an effort to determine whether or not his welfare was imperiled, and did not believe, for the reasons that they had as a result of that contact, that he required any further care. So I'm not going to second guess them at this point.
What was the specific well? Can you tell us about the events that happened after the apartment complex and its relation?
As you are aware, in the manifesto, he lays out a plan on what he intended to do. I will, without getting into too much detail, I will say that there are three people that were murdered in the apartment. It appears as though that happened, prior to him going on this mobile shooting rampage. The three male victims were apparently stabbed repeatedly with sharp objects, and it was a pretty horrific crime scene. Question is, did he shoot himself, or was he shot by sheriff's deputies? It would appear as though he took his own life at this point. We're still in the process of determining exactly who those people are and making positive identifications and notifying their next of kin, so I can't comment to that question right now. We're going to be looking at any and all evidence that we can gather. We also are asking anyone, as you can imagine, we have interviewed a huge number of witnesses, and there are probably still many more witnesses who we have not yet been in contact with. And if anyone was privy to any information about this case, or if anyone actually witnessed any aspect of this rampage that occurred last night, we encourage them to contact the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. I can't comment on that right now, Nick. The victims who were killed, the first 3 were killed in the suspect's residence. The next 2 were killed outside the Alpha Phi sorority, and the remaining fatally injured victim was killed on Pardal at a business, at a delicatessen. 3 in the apartment, 2 at the sorority, and 1 in the delicatessen. That's 6 by my math. And then we had 1 additional that was the suspect. So we had a total of 7 fatalities. We have that. Yeah. They were all prior? Yeah, all three weapons were purchased prior to his contact. So he had, well, you got to understand that when a firearm is purchased, there is a check run on people who purchase the firearm. But if a person has not been institutionalized or has not been taken against their will and put on a hold, that information is not entered into a database and is not disqualifying information for someone purchasing a firearm legally.
So were there 911 calls related to the stabbing? And if so, when did you find the stabbing?
We did not have any 911 calls related to the stabbing, and we subsequently found the victims while we were in the process of investigating this case, and went to the suspect's residence. I'm going to take one more question here. We have not been in contact other than recently, other than last night. We were in contact with his parents and interviewed them and notified them of his death. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Hoover. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. I know there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and I know we have a complicated list of locations. So we do have a map for you guys with all the locations that I can give you, and I'll also be around to help you guys with any additional questions you have. Thank you for coming.